Hey, you know that feeling when you hear a melody that just won't leave your head? Or you hear lyrics that seem like they were written just for you? How does a song even get there? Sometimes I feel like I have all the pieces of a song, but no idea how to put them all together. Other times I feel like, am I crazy or is this one actually good? Back in episode 61 of Worktapes, I interviewed Clay Mills, who wrote Diamond Rio's #1 hit song, Beautiful Mess. In that episode, we learned that Clay is the co-founder of Songtown.com, along with Marty Dodson. Songtown offers community, coaching, and connections, all built by hit songwriters for songwriters just like you and me. Whether you're a bedroom dreamer just starting out or a seasoned pro with lots of success, Songtown.com gives you access to expert feedback where you'll learn from the best with critiques from professional songwriters who've topped the charts. You'll get in-depth tutorials mastering the craft from melody and lyric writing to production and pitching. You'll get access to a thriving community where you can connect, collaborate, and find your tribe. So stop wondering what if and start writing what's next. Visit songtown.com/worktapes and unlock your song's true potential. This is where your song's next chapter starts. songtown.com/worktapes. Welcome to Worktapes. This is a podcast where we tear apart songs. Why was the song written? What's it about? What's the context and emotion behind it? Where were you at the time? What were you going through? How did certain lines come to you? What's the inspiration? How long did it take to write? I'm Brandon Carswell, and I'm fascinated with songwriting and how songs are built from the ground up. It's easy to hear a full production song on the radio and dismiss its origin story. I want to hear the rough draft of the song, or the work tape. I want to explore the very beginning of how songs that move us and make us move are born.
There's tracks in the driveway that he left while she was sleeping. Halfway to LA in search of something like meaning. There's a God that she prays to, but if she prays wrong, will he leave too? The boys out of school all suddenly seem so deceiving. It's hard to live when life's in the past tense. Someday he swears this will all make sense. She's named for a saint that her daddy used to believe in. Back then when all his
Welcome to Worktapes, everyone. I am Brandon Carswell, as usual, and today's guest has made his way in songwriting, comedy, podcasting. In songwriting, he's collaborated with people like Amy Grant, Matt Wertz, Carrie Underwood, Thomas Rhett, Maren Morris, and with the help of Blake Shelton, scored a Grammy-nominated #1 hit song called God Gave Me You. He's the co-host of a podcast called Dadville. And today we're going to discuss a song that he wrote called Someday This Will All Make Sense, and we're going to listen to the work tape of that song. A man of many personalities, Dave Barnes. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And just so everyone knows, that took like 5 times to get through the intro.
6 hours of the intro, but you really stuck at that time. And I think sticking to English was the move.
Yeah.
The Spanish one was good, but it meandered.
Dutch,
yeah. It's
a hard language.
It's a lot of hard R's.
How are you? Thanks for coming.
Good, yeah. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We met kind of we definitely met through Micah Talks.
Yeah.
Who you've worked with. And
who I was texting today. True story.
Were you?
Mm-hmm.
What did you text him about?
I was trying to see if he could do a mix, but he's like, bro, I'm just busy. I'm so busy. I was like, and I literally texted him, someone as talented as you should be busy.
He is busy. I can't even hang out with him.
I know.
So yes, thanks for being here. I want to start with you. Let's just start and dive in. Let's dive in. Let's dive in deep, because I think that I was thinking about this, like, how am I going to intro Dave? What am I going to ask him first? And you're such like an animated guy, and I am not. I'm the opposite of you. I'm pretty soft-spoken. People are not sure if I'm even nice.
We need you in the world
when
by
they
the way.
meet me.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. So I'm like, okay, my aim is to get to the serious side of Dave Barnes.
Oh, it's there. It's like Jaws lurking beneath at all times.
Is it?
Oh yeah, staring up at those legs. Just
see, but
I know it turns. I gotta
just
watch
comes
it. It
right
turns.
out.
Yeah, it does again.
Let's start with what drew you into music, because you do so many things, which I think we should talk about. But what were like your early years? What go all the way back to? Did you start in music as a kid? Were you fascinated with it that early, or were you later?
So my dad and mom both love music, which I think really matters in my story, because it was kind of always on in the background. Like I always say that if dad was doing anything, he had, and he's still alive, but like he just always got music on. Like if he was in the garage, music was on. If he was working the yard, music was on in the garage so we could hear it. I mean, he just really loved music. And so I think in some ways that I sort of osmotically pick that up, you know?
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of the way, if I'm the same way, if I'm doing anything, I probably got music on in the background. But I didn't, you know, it wasn't something I knew that could be done professionally. Like I knew obviously people did it because I listened to it, but there wasn't sort of like a pedigree for like, oh. So for me it was, and I lived in a really small town in Mississippi. So I didn't know somebody that played guitar. Like I'd never seen in real life a human play guitar until I went probably to my first concert, Amy Grant, Michael W. Smith, shout out.
Really?
Yeah, in Jackson.
That's full circle.
Yeah, it is, and it's crazy. Yeah, I could talk about that for a long time. But anyway, so I didn't know that. My first real interaction with it in a way that really like felt like a lightning strike is I went over to friends of mine. This is such a random story, and I'd always loved music. Like I always loved it. I think I'd been playing drum set at this point because I played marching band, and I played drums in marching band, and then that was kind of a, you know, like the gateway drug to drum set, which I love. My mom and dad bought me one of those, I think 7th, 8th grade. And I loved it. I played it all the time. We'd put tapes on and play along and do that whole thing. For those who remember tapes.
Worktapes.
Yeah.
See?
God, you are good. They said you're good, but you're even better than I imagine. And so I went over to my friend's house, and he had one of those. Remember Time Life used to sell those series of CDs that'd be like romance or you know, like hard rock. And he had, I think it was 1978, which is the year I was born. And it was like the hits of 1978. And I don't know why. I mean, I don't know why, but we were hanging out in his room, and he put the CD on the stereo. And I remember, to me, I remember clearly, he might be like, you weren't doing that. But I just remember standing in front of the stereo and being at the age where like, early teens, and it was like American Woman was on there, More Than a Feeling by Boston was on there. There was like 4 or 5 songs, and it was like the first time I'd really heard. I just remember standing in front of the speakers and listening and being like, what is this? Because some of the songs I actually didn't know, but it was like it was like one of the first strong memories I have in my life of like, I felt like I was drinking lightning. It was just like, oh my gosh, this feeling. And that sort of began my I would say more a mature version of being interested in music, where it was like, I want to participate in it. I don't want to just,
you might have said this, but how old were you?
Early teens.
Okay.
And I think that day was kind of the first day of the rest of my life in some ways, because I was like, oh, I don't want to just listen to this. I want to know how to be involved in it. And so I was playing drum set. We moved to Knoxville when I was in high school, and the last 2 years of my high school were at Farragut in Knoxville. And, you know, I started playing with people that went to school, and they'd come over and bring the guitars and amps. And that was totally new to me. I remember playing Alive by Pearl Jam. Yes. I think it was like the first time I ever jammed with somebody on, and I was like, this is the best feeling I've ever felt in my life.
What did you play? You played drums?
Drums, yeah.
Okay.
And so, you know, I joined a Christian band, and we toured all around Knoxville, and it was like a pretty grown up thing looking back on it. Like we had made a CD, we toured it, it was like around that area, and got a little bit of a thing going. And But it was weird because it didn't scratch an itch. Like I thought drumming was my thing. I came to MTSU, studied drum set, did the whole thing, thought this is what I'm going to do. But it wasn't until my freshman year when I started, my roommate had a guitar and he let me play, that I started writing songs. I don't know why. I have no clue why I started writing songs. But when I picked up a guitar, my brain went, oh, you write songs with this. Not you learn blues licks, you don't learn Dave Matthews. It was like you play song, like you write songs. And so I just immediately started doing that. And slowly but surely, when I started that, I was like, oh, this is the thing. Like drums is cool, but I realized that drums was just my way to interact with music. But this was where I was really wanting to end up, was like writing and singing it. But not singing it yet because my best friend, still my closest friend in the world, a guy named Mike Candros, Micah, could sing. And so freshman, sophomore year, we'd write little songs together and start kind of playing them out. And I'd play guitar and he would sing. And then I wrote this one song that I played for him, I think, my sophomore year. He's like, man, you actually sound pretty good singing this. And I was like, oh no, dude, like I'm a drummer. I was still like, my goal was like to move to Nashville and play drums for DC Talk or something. It was just like, I wanted to do that. Yeah, come on, man.
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? Jesus Freak come out and I was like, this is maybe the greatest record of all time. And, but that day he was like, listen, I'm not singing that song. If you want people to hear it, you got to sing it. And it was like, that was it. I was like, oh, shoot. So then my whole brain shifted like, well, I guess I got to sing now. And so I just started, I'm so dysfunctional in so many ways, but my logical next step was then I just got to go play shows. It wasn't like, oh, I should learn how to sing. Or I just was like, I guess you just go do it. And so literally just started booking shows and never sung for a human.
Under your own name?
Under my own name. And just started doing shows. And it was like, all right, here we go.
Still in your teens at this point?
This is like 19, 20.
Okay.
So it's like kind of back half of college. And then that was the beginning. Then I moved to Nashville and worked for a guy named Ed Cash for a hot minute. And then Ed and I made a bunch of records together. It was kind of off to the races, but really random beginning because it was I never knew what I was doing. It's just doors kept opening that kept making more sense. And I think God was sort of stringing me along there in really cool ways to get me to where I am now, which really is what I love doing.
Yeah. So going back to when you were listening with your friend.
Yeah.
What do you think it was? Do you think it was the speakers, like something sounded different? Like it sounded better? Like it was more?
I do think that's a piece of it. I think there was something about interacting with it for the first time where I was focused on it. Like I was standing in front of a stereo. Like you know, I was just standing there and I think the volume mattered. I think, you know, it was just something about my brain was at a point where it was like, I'm ready to interact with this in a different way than just sort of like, it's on in the background and it's fun because we always had music on in the background, but this was the first time. And I think I didn't know those songs well too. So there was this like, what is this?
But also
music?
You're talking about, I think you mentioned Boston. You're talking about records that sound unbelievable.
Unbelievable. And specific parts. And I mean, just, it was great. Dust in the Wind was on that.
Yeah. See?
And it was just songs that I was like, and again, I'd heard great. So my dad loves great music. So I knew great music. So it wasn't that I was like, what is this? But it was just like something about that moment. It's like everything felt so new and turbocharged.
Yeah.
You know?
It's interesting. I think enough people I don't think enough people listen to music in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely losing it. That's for sure.
We used to, I think as humans, we used to listen to music on great stereos.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in a way, I listened to the Wonder, what was it called? The Stevie Wonder podcast that Barack and his family were part of. I forget The Wonder of Stevie.
Okay. And
they interview Michelle Obama, and she says, people don't understand that when you used to buy a record, every sense other than like taste was involved because it would have a smell. Mm-hmm. You would put it in and sit down, open it, read it, listen, look at it, feel it. She's like, so it was all but one of your senses were engaged, and so it wasn't just listening to music; it was experiencing music. You know, And I think that really matters. You know,
it does.
And so I think in some ways that was a little bit of what happened that day, but it was cataclysmic. I mean, it was life changing.
We've definitely lost that with streaming and listening through Bluetooth and all of this stuff that gets compressed and it doesn't sound quite right.
Yeah.
As a music nerd, you know that, but you don't have to be a nerd to hear it.
Yeah, you don't.
At all.
You don't. Yeah, it's true.
And it's a good challenge for those listening. Go buy a Dave Barnes vinyl or something and put headphones on and lay on the floor.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really different. It's funny because it's the same thing. I mean, it's like whether it's on your car on a run, but
Yeah.
it's when you really choose to engage it. It's crazy how different it feels.
So you're a drummer, and that was the idea.
Yeah.
You were going to come here. You were going to play drums.
Yeah.
Arguably, though, Jesus Freak wasn't their best record.
Oh, whoa, hot take.
I think it's Supernatural.
You like Supernatural? Yeah, I can't go with you there, but I love
You
your
can't.
energy.
Maybe I need to go back.
No, well, I mean, they're both great. For me, Jesus Freak was like, what is this? I listened to that record with my kids the other day.
Speaking of that stuff, what was influencing you at the time? Even when you were thinking, I want to be a drummer.
Man, I wore out the Spin Doctor first record.
Oh, yeah.
I got to meet Aaron Comas last year, and it was a massive moment for me.
Yeah.
Because we played a...
which record was that? What was that called?
Pocket Full of Kryptonite.
Okay, yeah.
It's such a good record.
Yeah.
That is a record I will die on that hill.
I was talking to somebody about the Spin Doctors not too long ago, and they were like, what songs do they have? I'm like, are you kidding?
Oh, I'll punch
Go
them in the
listen.
throat.
Yeah.
Well, that record, there's a lot of records like this, but this one is on this list for me of records that if you aren't paying attention to, you're like, yeah, it's like kind of fun, a little bit of cheesy pop. But if you get a guitar, and I dare you to learn those guitar parts, and you will go, wait,
Yeah.
what is he doing?
Yeah.
Or the drumming is insane, but it's really much more deep than you feel, which I think is a little bit of the genius of not just that band, but especially that record. Is
Yeah.
because on first listen, like, oh, it's just fun.
Is that
you
the
know?
one with the phone booth on the cover? Okay, yeah.
But it's deeply, deeply musical.
Yeah.
So that, and I mean, it was a lot of Pearl Jam. So for me, this would have been like 94, 93, 94. And so it was a lot of that kind of the beginnings of grunge.
Yeah.
Eventually I got into like, Super Unknown, which for a drummer is a really fun record. 'Cause
Yes.
There's so much odd time stuff.
So much.
Matt Cameron is just a monster.
I still love that record.
Oh, it's
so
incredible.
much. It's insane.
You want to,
It's insane.
songwriting wise, that's, this is weird and we don't have to go off on this tangent, but I really do. Like, if you look at the lineage of the Beatles, to me, Paul McCartney has a pretty well-worn path of people that you can see sort of followed in his wake in beautiful ways, be it ELO or Jellyfish or whatever, right? A lot of bands that really took that mantle and really did it well.
Yeah.
And tons of pop bands, whatever. Lennon, to me, it's harder to do that with because his is so awesomely weird, the songs he wrote. Like, it's not as easy to, but to me, Super Unknown actually does that in some ways. These kind of chord progressions, you're like, that should never work. And Chris Cornell's like, not only will it work, it's going to be a hit.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is, my opinion, John's great legacy to the music world is taking songs that you're like, I will give you every chord that's in this song, and $1 million says I could leave you in here for a year, and you'll never be able to put these chords together in a way that's memorable. And Lennon's like, oh, well, how about this? And you're like, that's what he can do.
Right.
And I think Super Unknown's got a little bit of that, where you're like, why does this work so well?
It works so well.
Not the bends, but okay, computers like that for me, where you're like, how is this music this good and so weird?
So weird and complicated.
So complicated. Like chords that do not have anything to do with each other.
Yeah.
Nothing. And it's, oh, they can though. Watch me wake them work.
Yeah. We were in a band one time when we had a guitar player with us for a short time that was like, well, you can't play major and minor chords together. You can't write a song like that. You can't go from this to that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, but you can.
Just give them a Beatles record. Be
and
like,
also,
start over now?
I mean, like, it was like, there's not a rule book,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. I get what you're saying.
Well,
Like,
you do, like, you think about Norwegian Wood or Penny Lane, and
Yeah.
you're like, you have the same chord major and minor in the same song. I mean, Norwegian Wood starts in, I think it's E major, and then the chorus is E minor.
Yeah.
You're like, that's some flexing, man.
yeah. I'm so glad that you were into grunge. I don't know why. That makes me happy.
Well, you know what's funny? When we moved to Knoxville, the guys that I carpooled with to school, because I would not have been left to my own devices. I'm much too poppy for that. But they were like, they looked like a Nirvana video. Like,
Yeah.
they were wholly invested. Long hair, Vans, wonderful guys. Because at first I was super intimidated. I was like, man, these guys look kind of scare me, but they were awesome.
Yeah.
But every morning it was Tool, Nirvana.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it was getting in the car. I was like, the devil's going to manifest
Yeah.
himself in these back seats, which he probably did in the weekends. But
only with Tool, though.
but you know what's funny? I was like, God, Tool's kind of awesome. You know what I mean?
Tool
It
is
was
very
like,
awesome.
and I think for me, it was that was a gift to me because I think it got me out of my sort of like coming up in the safe music world.
Are there any metal bands nowadays that you like?
I don't
Metal?
keep up with it, but I promise you, I know myself, and if you played me 5 of them, I'd probably like them.
Yeah.
that was a good season for me because I think it really opened my eyes to like, oh, there's really, because, man, you just, especially in that day and age, it would be like, these are bad people making bad music.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, and my parents weren't like that, by the way. I want to say, like, they were not those people at all.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't like that's the devil's music. But I think I just was. I was like, oh, it just kind of scares me. And to be in the car with one of those guys and be like, God, that song is good. I'd find myself third period, like walking around singing that. I was like, gosh, that's so hooky.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'd be like, hey, will you play that Nirvana tune again? And the next morning, and so it was good for me to kind of go, oh, this is like, it's just good music,
Yeah.
Some of it's crazy. But I mean, Alice in Chains, all this stuff. I was like,
dude, I was the same way. Like my drummer, I was in a band when I was 13, 14, and my drummer would cart me around. He was 19.
Yeah.
And so he'd come pick me up, and we were listening to like Pantera, Metallica, Hank Williams Jr. in the same day, like just like popping in tapes. And it was schooling me, dude.
Well, it's really fun. I mean, Pearl Jam, it's funny. Like all those bands, Nirvana, I did the really deep dive on them about a year ago and listened to their records. And I hadn't in a long time. And it was a tutorial. I mean,
yeah.
And you know what you realize when you do that, in my opinion, is you see, especially with Nevermind, it really is a pop masterpiece. And a lot of people would be like, well, it's grunge or whatever. And I'm like, if you play it on guitar, it's some of the most melodic, well-written songs ever. It's just the way they produced it, it had all this fuzz and distortion, so it sort of fools you into thinking it's these other kind of songs. But on guitar, they're really these like beautiful pop songs.
Yeah.
And then you read quotes about him, how one of the pedigrees for them was to sound like the Beatles, and how Butch Vig was like, we're stripping everything down to where it's only hooks on every instrument. And you realize like, aha.
Yeah.
But at the time, it felt like, whoa, these pissed off young teens.
Yeah, well, it was hooks, and it was hooks with passion.
Oh, that's beautifully said. That's a great way to say that.
That's why my kids love Nirvana. Like it's just gonna last forever.
Oh, it's so good. I mean, I listened with my kids, and it was really fun to sort of be like, let me take this. And then again, I just did this crazy because I was so fascinated with like, because again, when they were out, I was kind of like, this feels a little woof, and Kurt and his whole thing was kind of intimidating and dark. And I was like, but yeah, it's great. But all that stuff was sort of in the background.
But what's great, and we can get off of this tangent, but I love this. So, what's great about Kurt Cobain was that his struggle was just out there. Like he didn't care.
Yeah.
It was out there.
Yeah.
And so the passion in the music and the hooks, yes, but also you got to see him like kind of in real time, in real life.
Yeah.
I wonder what it would have been like if like social media had been a thing when at his highest, when Nevermind hit and they were just exploding.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know what's crazy about that last story about this? I thought this was so fascinating. They were popping off 92, 93, 94, that kind of world. The world was still at a place where they would show up when Nevermind came out. It got so successful so quickly that the label sold out of records because they only got like 300,000 printed or something. So they sold out, and they were like, and then, Dave Grohl talks about how they would get to venues and the venue would have sold out, but there would be 3 times as many people in the line that could fit in the venue. And Nirvana would they were learning this real time. So they'd show up and be like, oh my God, it looks like it's working. And so they were almost like, they were finding out as much as you and I would have been found.
Right.
Like it was just, that's where the world was, that their fame was so far ahead of them that they were learning at the same time their fans were how well it was working. And so, the guy said that they had this budget for set aside to promote it, and they never used it because they didn't need to, because it just exploded that quickly.
Yeah.
But those kind of things are so funny to think about, because you can imagine being in a van and you really could have sold out probably, the local arena, but you're playing at like Exit In.
Yeah.
Because you booked it 6 months ago, and they thought, we want to get to the second record. And
that's so interesting.
It's exploding.
Wow.
Like they couldn't catch up to it,
Yeah.
There was some crazy stat where they were selling, I'm going to get it wrong, but like hundreds of thousands a week, for a while.
Yeah.
And you're just like, that's just crazy to think about, that era of music,
It's insane. I mean, I could talk about that all day.
Yeah.
That seriously, because my kids are so into it. We listen to Nevermind literally all the time.
Yeah.
We have the CD in the car, and they pop it in.
Yeah.
And They're learning guitar.
No, that's a great record.
My kids are 10 and 13, so they're playing all the Nirvana songs. Yeah.
That was like one of my first little.
Yeah.
I got that one in the bag and it felt real cool.
Me too. Me too. Were your family, so you got into singing, but I'm curious, like, was your family musical? Did you have people?
No. I mean,
so where did that come from?
I don't know, God. I don't know.
Nobody can sing in your family?
I mean, they can all sing and
they just don't.
Yeah. Nobody's like trying to rock the mic or anything. But my dad, well, the funny thing about my dad is he kind of showed me how to play both guitar and drums. Okay. Because he was kind of like, he knew enough on both to kind of be dangerous. And so, I think if he had wanted to, he probably could have done it to some degree. I'm not saying at a professional level, but I mean, like he can get around on it.
Yeah.
And the same with drums. And so it was funny because I sort of forget that sometimes how I started, but he was one that was like, all right, here's how you, like we were playing Creedence Clearwater songs on guitar, it's kind of like, oh, I can kind of keep up with this, but none of them in any kind of like, grown up professional capacity.
Okay. So you grabbed a guitar and you started writing. You said you don't know why, but that's not acceptable. You got to give us a why.
It's fail.
That's not an acceptable answer. You must have had some kind of push. Like, were you listening to something or somebody?
Again, I think I just so badly wanted to interact with music.
Was it before your buddy said you have a good voice?
Oh, yeah, way. I mean, it was like a couple years.
Okay, so you had that in your mind, and you're like, well, I can sing, so maybe I can write?
No, no, because I wrote when I couldn't sing.
Okay.
Like, I would just kind of quietly in my dorm room when my roommate was gone because he let me use his guitar.
Okay.
And I'd write these little tunes very sheepishly, kind of like, okay, does that rhyme? And then I'd show them to Mike and my buddy, and he'd go, oh, and then he'd sing it. And I'd be like, oh, that sounds good.
Okay.
Like, you sing good, And then, again, he heard me sophomore year. I was like, hey, sing this one. And he's like, oh, no, you should sing that. And I was like, no, I don't sing. He's like, you sound cool. And I was like, for real? And then it was like, oh, I should rethink about this then. And then, because, like, for instance, if you go, God bless, anybody can sing that way. But then if you sing it, God bless them, all of a sudden there's intent and you have a voice.
Yeah.
And I think that was when I went, oh, should I kind of lean into this and see what happens when I like try to sing and like really sing it and not like communicate something? And it was like, oh yeah, because I'd record myself on little tapes in my bedroom and I'd be like, oh, it does sound kind of cool, like maybe I do have something here.
Yeah.
And so, and then, in a monumental moment for me, when I was at MTSU, I think it was my junior year, around that same time, I had a class that canceled last minute. So I was on campus, didn't want to leave. And I went to the Mass Comm library. And they had all of these performing songwriters, which is still my favorite magazine of all time. It's not in print anymore. And I was like, because I was just killing time. This is before cell phones or anything. So I'm like, just kind of walking around the Mass Comm building thinking, I don't want to go back to my apartment. I got to stay here. So I walked to the Mass Comm and I was looking around. I was like, oh, what's this magazine? And I pulled it down and literally it was like I opened it and because, I think one of the first ones I read was maybe Paul Simon or Billy Joel. But, I'm writing songs at this point, kind of recreationally, and I'm reading these interviews with John Mellencamp, Paul Simon, Bruce Horn, and they're like, when I'm writing songs, I find myself wandering in the yard and I don't know how I got there. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I do. And so I was just burning. So I ended up skipping the class after the hour because I just had my nose deep in these magazines of like, wait, this is a thing? Like people feel like this? Because I feel like this. And that was really the beginning of like, oh my gosh, like being a songwriter is a thing. Like you have a disposition, a way you feel and move in the world and take the world in. And through these pages, there was this community of people I found that was like, oh my gosh, this, because I didn't, I thought I'm just kind of weird. But it was like, no, man, this is like, you're a songwriter. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, and then it was like, oh, well then that's what I want to do. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking about now. Like drumming.
And you were like, were you immersed in like the craft of it? Like, did you want to be an artist or did you want to be a songwriter? Or did you know yet?
I didn't. That's a great way to put that. I didn't know yet. I thought I wanted to be a songwriter because I didn't sing.
Okay.
And then the minute I sang, and I was writing.
That's so funny. I'm so fascinated by songwriters who can't sing. They're not good singers, but they write amazing songs.
I know, isn't it crazy?
It just blows.
Because it doesn't take a good singer to sing a good melody.
It's weird. It's weird.
That's a gift. I think that's a real gift from God because it means you can still accomplish it without necessarily having that whatever. But yeah. So for me at the time, I was writing I was listening to a lot of Skip Ewing kind of stuff. Like early Brian White and country stuff that was like, country was really, I really loved country back then when I was in college. I didn't really listen to it before then, but that was kind of like Sons of the Desert.
90s country?
Yeah, kind of like late, like kind of late 90s country. And so I would see like, oh, this guy wrote that song, not the artist. And then that was another like, oh my God, okay, so maybe I can write songs for people because I don't sing. But I was writing kind of like nice little vanilla stale songs. But the minute I was like, oh, I'm going to sing these as myself, it was like, I gotta amp that up. It's got to have a little more meat on the bones and be a little less, you know?
Yeah.
And so then it was interesting because I started writing much more artistic songs. Like, what's a different way to say that?
You mean for yourself?
For myself, yeah. And so there was a pretty massive stop and start between like all the little frilly songs. I'd listen to country, be like, oh, I think I can write a little country thing, and it looks like this. But the minute it was like, oh no, this is gonna be under my name. Like I'm gonna go play this as Dave Barnes. I was like, oh, then I started leaning into like Bonnie Raitt, Stevie Wonder, like Mark Cohn, things that I was like, oh, these are artists. Yeah. You know, this is not sort of made for the mainstream. This is for people who are like trying to be like, hey, this is how I feel about something. Yeah. You know?
Yes.
And that was suddenly really fun because I was like, oh man, I can like put my stamp on this.
Okay. So when you started doing that and it started becoming like your job to be an artist. Yeah. You were still thinking about writing songs for other people?
No, that stopped immediately.
Really?
Yeah, that was when I sort of was like, oh, I'm going to play these out. It was like, everything I write is for me now.
Okay, so then how did you get into publishing them? Because so when you get a deal, a lot of times you get a pub deal along with it, right?
Yeah.
So how were other artists hearing your songs? Because you write for other people, huh?
Mm-hmm. Well, early days, it was funny. And I really miss these days because it was such an innocence to it. Because when I moved to Nashville, Ed and I made this EP called 3 Them 4, and I toured that for a couple years. But you want to have a real good time, try touring a 5-song EP for 2 years. It was like, you might have heard these last time.
We're going to play them again in an hour.
Yeah. And I didn't even play the whole EP. That was funny. So I was writing a lot, and that was kind of like filling the set out more of these new songs. But when I got here, you know, I started to do the thing, and thanks to things like Napster and LimeWire, like it just sort of took off. It was like all of a sudden I'd show up to a place I'd never been, and there'd be 300 people there, 500 people there. And so that way artists started hearing about me. So every now and then, you know, somebody would be coming through Nashville and I get an email and it'd be some major label artist or something. And they'd be like, hey man, I love your music. I've got like a couple days. Could we write a song together? And this is before I knew that was like a thing. Okay. And so I'd be like, sure. Like, I don't know what that means. So I just kind of had my guitar, and either they'd be like, hey, meet me at the studio or my apartment.
So you didn't have like a manager or publisher going, hey,
no,
here's these,
yet.
let's schedule these rights.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
And so people would just like rock up to my apartment, or I'd go to some place, and I mean, it was so wonderfully simple because I was like, you want to write something? They'd be, yeah, let's, and I'm like, cool.
I love that.
You know, or they'd go, hey, I had this idea, and you'd write it, and I'd leave thinking that was fun. But then like, you know, I was getting these cuts, and it was like, oh, this is cool. I'm on this record. Look, my name's on the right, you know. But I was so focused on my own thing. Mm-hmm. It was like, that's all fine, but this is what I'm really trying to do. And then when God Gave Me You happened with Blake, you know, it happened this perfect sort of coming together moment in my life because we had just had our first kid. I was really ready to give the road a break. I wanted to be a dad so bad and be home and participate in like more of a home life with my wife and everything. And so when Blake heard it and it did what it did, suddenly people in Nashville were much more kind of like, hey, because, you know, I've been here my whole career, so I had tons of friends, you know, I knew publishers, but they were always like, oh, he's doing his thing. And then it was suddenly like, well, hold on. Are you doing country music? Yeah. And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, well, you want to write more country music? And I was like, you know, sure, why not? You know? So then that's when I started shopping pub deals because people were like, hey, you know, we'd love to have you write with us. And because when you write a song by yourself that does like that, you can imagine a lot of people are suddenly like, well, hello there, Mr. Barnes, you know? And so, so I ended up like, signing with BMG, and then that's really where the professional songwriter thing started, because it was like, okay, I'd had cuts and almost had a couple of singles, but just totally out of weird happenstance. Gotcha. Never some like, you know, I'm out there shopping my thing in the streets, you know, like, and then now it was like, okay, now we're going to like put you with artists and try to get you songs recorded. And you know, I want that to happen too, because I've seen the money you can make from those kind of things. And I was saying like, man, that keeps me off having to quite hit the road as hard as I was.
For sure.
I'm in. And so then that sort of began the sort of professional songwriting part of my career.
Yeah.
Or added to it. One
thing I do want to discuss with you is comedy.
Yeah.
But I want to tie it together with music.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're really funny.
Well,
first of all, I would be bad if you weren't, and you were like, I'm a comedian. When did that start for you? First of all, was that as young as music? Were you interested in that? Did you just find yourself making people laugh?
Yeah.
Or were you, not to get too like heady or existential, were you covering up for something else, trying to be funny for other people?
Yeah.
And then does it inform your songwriting?
Yeah.
Do you want me to add any more questions to that?
No, I think I can do this, actually. I think I've kind of always been funny a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
And then probably like early teenage years, this is so funny. This is such an incriminating story, but like, you know, I wasn't exactly always a hit with the ladies. That's really hard to believe.
Not always, but now you are.
You got to ask the ladies. Yeah, that's a ladies question.
Okay.
We can poll the ladies.
We'll do that.
Don't actually. That would be.
I'm not gonna
I don't want to know what they say.
We're not going to
really don't want to know what they say. But so I remember going to this youth group retreat, and again, like my friends would have said, like Dave's funny, but not like capital F funny. Like he's funny, you know, he's funny. Dave's funny. He's an interesting guy.
Normal funny.
He's normal. He's normal funny. He's approachable.
Yeah.
Funny. But we went on this retreat, and they were doing a skit, and the skit was this dating game kind of thing that was on TV at the time, and they were like, man, we need a host. And I was like, I'll do it. And we improv the whole skit. And I remember looking out at one point, and all of the pretty girls were laughing, and I was like, this is an interesting
Did that make
feeling.
You derail or lean in?
No. That was when like the more thunder got summoned. And it was just like, this is an interesting way to get people to like you, or to, and I don't think it was some deep seated like, I don't like myself. It was just like, whoa, that is effective, man.
Yeah.
Like, look at this, you know? And so I think from then on, it was a little bit of like, oh, maybe I'm like a little funnier than maybe some people are. And I would do skits and do that. And all through college, I was doing that kind of stuff in front of people. And so the way, it's funny that you asked the way you did, because the way it ties into music is, the only reason I was as confident to go play shows when I didn't know how to sing was I was just so confident being in front of people.
Okay.
Because I knew I could make them laugh. And so basically, if you had been to my shows back then, the way that they rolled was a ton of stories, a song I was terrified to sing, ton of stories, terrifying 3 minutes of a song, story. Because the stories would calm me down.
Interesting.
And then you'd be like, all right, freaking, I got to sing. And
See, I feel like I'd be the opposite.
Yeah.
Like I'm more comfortable at singing the song.
Yeah.
And if I have to tell a funny story, I'm in my head the whole time.
No, I'm very much the opposite. Still to this day in some ways. And so for me, it was like that was the thing that calmed me down. And so the shows were kind of almost like it was just kind of a free for all. And so people really enjoyed coming because they'd hear some songs and whatever, but they'd also see me just kind of like being an idiot and telling stupid stories. And so it really helped me get comfortable doing it, you know? And so, you know, they don't, in my brain, they don't meet. Like, I'm not one of those guys that's trying to write Adam Sandler songs because I don't think I'd actually do it very well. But they absolutely participate together in the live setting for me. You know?
It's like stage banter for
exactly
during the music.
Yep.
But did you actually have a comedy bit? Like
I've done stand-up shows. Yeah, I've done probably 20 or 30.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Would you keep doing that? Is that something you liked?
I really like it.
You do?
It needs more attention than I give it, but I love doing it. It's every now and then somebody will hire me to come do a show, and it's, oh my gosh, it's fun. It's so much fun.
Would you do would you film one?
We did.
You did?
Mm-hmm. You can actually rent it on
I knew that. I did all my research. I was just...
No, it's really obscure. We did a city winery show. Gosh, man, it's been probably 7 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And recorded it. And it was really great. It was a good show. And so,
what's the response like? Do you have like comedy fans?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
You know what's tricky about that? Not to get like all esoteric, but I think the thing that's tricky about humor when you're a musician is like, it's not like people take it for granted because that sounds really sad. But I think because it's juxtaposed to something else, It doesn't sort of just stand, and I don't want it to. I don't want people to think I'm a comedian, but like I'm not. I mean, I know they help each other.
Why don't you want them to think that?
Because I work too hard at songwriting and singing.
Why can't you do both?
I think people. I don't know if people understand that. I really don't.
Why?
I think we need to know what something is to really be able to ingest it. A lot of times.
What about like the Jared Leto's and?
I mean,
you know,
I would continue that argument.
It's like the Steve Martin thing. You know,
well,
be so good they can't ignore you.
Well, that's it.
But you're good at songwriting. You're good at joke writing.
I don't think you can make a lot of examples for a funny person that writes serious music. I think you can make a lot of examples for either an actor that does music or Adam Sandler does funny music. But it's tricky when you get into like, oh, he's really funny, and then he has really. I mean, you have Todd Snyder and those kind of guys who are incredible at it, but they're not comedians. They're not doing stand-up shows on their own, really. And so it's a weird space-time continuum thing.
Well, there's that like comedians and musicians talk about it all the time.
Yeah,
how as a musician you wish you could be a comedian, and comedians want to be musicians. And I'm still I haven't gone down that road enough to like. I say I'm fascinated with that, but I haven't really looked at it too hard. What do you think that is? What's the connection between comedy and music?
I don't know. It's all performing. It's all expression. I don't know. I mean, it's
because they seem really opposite,
different,
and really close together.
They elicit extreme responses, I think, which is really, really addictive.
Yeah.
Like when you can stand on stage and see people respond to either music or comedy, it's like, that's a weird power.
Do you know what? You want to know why I want to be a comedian? Because you don't have to take anything with you.
Oh, bro, those shows, you don't understand. Like rolling up when you don't have anything.
You have your clothes on.
Like you walk out and you're like, they're like, sound check, like, hey, what's up, everybody? Cleveland, how y'all feeling? Cool. I'm like, cool. And you walk back. I mean, it's
5 hours till showtime.
Oh my God. It's a joke. Yeah, literally. Like, it's really fun. I want to do it again. I just got to figure out, you have to build these sets, which is pretty ambitious and overwhelming. Although I did do a tour where I did both. So I did a tour actually here at the Ryman where I did 45 minutes of music, hard stop 15 minutes, 45 minutes of stand-up.
Oh, you could do a variety show.
Well, that's kind of what it was. And then I did 15 more minutes of like, I did like God Gave Me Another Song, and then that was the night. It was really fun. It was exhausting.
Oh, I'm sure.
Man, you talking about like your brain just like
fried,
melting in your, it was really fun though.
A lot of planning.
Yeah, a lot of planning.
I would like to see that. Are you going to do it again?
Someday, I think.
Someday, this will all make sense.
Oh, you are good. You should have a podcast.
I'm trying, man. This is episode 65.
Wow. I'm so glad it wasn't 66. I don't need that in my life. Don't bump me.
I'm not sure who 66 is going to be.
Don't do it.
Why? It's 666, not 66.
I know, but you're halfway there. More than halfway there.
More than halfway there. All right. I'll do what I can.
Thank you. Just don't.
66.5.
I don't need that hex on my life. Oh my gosh.
Someday This All Will Make Sense is a really long song title.
It is. I love long song titles.
You do?
Oh yeah.
Tell us about that. Why do you love long?
Because I kind of came up like if you went to my.
Just want to annoy the graphic designers.
Yeah, that's it. When I was starting, like really, really, really getting into writing my own songs, I was listening to just copious amounts of folk. So it would be like Jonathan Brooke or John Gorka, a guy named Bebo Norman, David Wilcox, a lot of Dadgad. And I just loved anything that felt like
tell our listeners what that means.
If you just want to get down on some acoustic guitar work, just get into Dadgad.
I need to show that to my sons.
It's tuned, so it's tuned D-A-D, G-A-D. And it's just kind of like a lot of really great folk artists use that tuning. I think it's an Irish tuning, kind of comes from that world. So it feels very kind of folk and, big and open. And
it feels like it's easy to play.
It's really easy to play. It's easier to play, I should say. Really good people who play it, it can be really tough. But so for me, that that's that folk world where like everything's got like a ton of words and it's really big words, and so I like when I see the back of a CD or an album and I'm like, ooh, long title. I mean, that's the song I want to listen to first.
Really?
I'm like, just because it's probably going to be more lyrically substantial, so that I'm always kind of a little more drawn to those songs,
right?
So I'm way down with.
As a podcaster, it's really annoying.
Listen, I ask you to carry a burden, and I appreciate that you do.
I'm being a jerk. It's a great song. I love this song. I really, really love this song.
Thanks a lot.
Why don't we go ahead and listen to the Worktape?
Great.
This episode of Worktapes is brought to you by Eastside Music Supply. Eastside Music Supply is a music shop in Nashville, Tennessee. It's my go-to spot for all things gear related, whether it's guitars, bass guitars, if I need work on my gear, if I need to buy a pedal that's really cool and awesome, that's super unique. They've got that kind of stuff there. They've got cool merch, audio gear, all the stuff. You're dealing with the best people in the industry, unlike those big box stores that don't really care. Eastside Music Supply cares. They care about your tone. They care about your experience. Go to eastsidemusicsupply.com. If you're not local to Nashville, they will hook you up. Tell them when you go that Brandon from Worktapes sent you.
There's tracks in the driveway that he left while she was sleeping. Halfway to LA in search of something like me. There's a God that she prays to, but if she prays wrong, will they leave to the boys out of school? All suddenly seem so deceiving. It's hard to live when life's in the past tense. Someday he swears this will all make sense. Ooh. For a saint that her daddy used to believe in. Back then when all his beliefs were strong as his feelings. And she keeps on praying through the bad words. She keeps saying boys out of school all suddenly seem so appealing. It's hard to live with life in the past tense. Someday he swears this will all make sense. Ooh. All of a sudden something's broken she didn't know could break. Now she lives with a decision that she didn't make. Ooh. The weight of goodbye is a patient, a kind, oh, but love is. The weight of goodbye is a patient, a kind, oh, but love is. The weight of goodbye is a patient, is a kind, oh, no, but love is. The weight of goodbye is a patient, a kind, as much as you try, oh, no, but love is.
Cool. Okay, so for the Worktape, I want to say, without sounding like a jerk again, that I actually like the Worktape better.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh, I love hearing that.
I really did. I listened to it on the way here again, and I kind of A-B'd them, and I was like, oh, man. But I'm kind of a sucker for Worktapes.
Yeah. Well, I hope
and
so.
I think that, yeah, it'd be bad if I didn't.
You're like, dude, I haven't really said this much, but God, I hate Worktapes.
Man, this
This
was such a dumb idea. No, I think I liked it because don't get me wrong, like the production version is amazing. I told you that the strings are insane, are beautiful, and they bring out a different quality in the song and make it a different song.
Yeah, they do.
But the acoustic guitar stuff you did, the doubling up the vocal in the work tape, even some of the harmonies are a little bit different.
Yeah.
Or at least maybe the production kind of buries them.
Yep.
And so you can kind of hear all of these things, and then you do a guitar thing at the end that you don't do on the other one.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because of A.B. it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But tell us about the song.
Yeah.
What is it, like, paint us a picture of, like, when you had the idea, did you co-write it? If so, who was it? And what was going on in the room?
So this, you're going to wish you hadn't asked that because it has this really long explanation, but I'll try to.
It's a long title, so I expect nothing less.
It's appropriate.
So appropriate.
Oh my gosh, you saw it coming. So about in December of 2022, I was cleaning my studio. My wife had given me Paul McCartney's lyrics books, which he's quoted as saying the closest he'll ever get to writing an autobiography. Basically, he spelunked all of his properties across the world to find artifacts and memorabilia and fun little trinkets. And while he did that, he found like all these old lyrics and stuff. And so it's a really cool couple of books because it's pictures of that he found that he didn't know he had. It's pictures of lyrics he didn't know he had. But then with his songs, so each chapter, if you want to call it that, is a song, the lyrics of a song, and then him talking about the songs. And then sometimes some of the memorabilia that has something to do with the song. Sitting in my studio cleaning, it was actually New Year's Day because I was like, we were sitting around the house like, oh, I need to do something, go crazy. So I went back there and started, and I was like, I'm just going to play. Because I realized I hadn't done like a Beatles proper deep dive. And so I just turned them on my studio speakers and was cleaning, just starting with record one. And I kept finding myself stopping and going, that's a cool chord progression. And like grabbing the guitar and going, whoa. And like, okay. And so after a while, I was like, I need to give this some like grown up attention. And so I decided that in 2023, is that true? Or maybe it's 1 year back. It doesn't matter, whatever year that was. I was just going to listen to the Beatles. That's all I did. I think it was 2022.
For just a whole year, you mean?
Yeah, a whole year. That's literally all I listened to, my kids and everything. And it was, I mean, there's just not words for what I learned in that year, and still am. I still listen mostly to the Beatles still, because I'm writing my second record that's like this. But I decided I'm just going to listen to it, and then I'm going to make a record inspired by this, what I've learned. Yeah. And so the record is called Featherbrain Wealth Motel, and it's what
great title.
Thanks. That's what Someday This Will All Make Sense is on. And so when I was writing these songs, I kind of had archetypes in my brain. Like, you know, like I sort of had a board of Beatles songs I loved, and like, what would it be like if I tried to write my version of Let It Be? What would it be like if I tried to write my version of Blackbird or whatever, you know, songs I love? And so Someday This Will All Make Sense was sort of informed by that, but it was just kind of written in that time. I did like the story part of it. You know, I liked kind of the Eleanor Rigby thing, which, you know, obviously that plays in to the production of the album version, but it was just like, it was a real story, or not a real story. It was how I imagined a real thing that had happened in the world. And a friend of mine had gone through a really hard thing. And so that was me just kind of sussing it out. So lyrically, it's just this kind of like take on what had happened. And I'd written it like I did with the, you know, that kind of doodle-doodle, that arpeggiated thing. And I really liked it. I thought it was really cool, but it didn't quite fit in what I would have thought the rest of the record Beatles tip of the hat did. It would have been a little too like Elliott Smithy or something. It just felt like, and so I was working with Ben Shive on a couple of things. He was playing on a couple of parts of the record, and so I was driving, I was like, man, what can we do to this song to make it better? And I was like, what if we just did it like Eleanor Rigby? Like, that's obviously right in the middle of what I'm trying to do. Right. So I got there with him and I was like, hey, instead of playing on top of this, what if we scrap the whole thing and you just like write strings over this with me? And he was like, great. So we did like an afternoon session. I got in the car and I was listening to the roughs and it just wasn't right. I was like, why is this? It was a little too orchestrated, which was my fault. And So I drove home that night. I was like, this may have been a bad idea. But we had another day booked. And so driving the next morning, I listened to Eleanor Rigby really closely. And I realized one of the reasons, a million reasons, but one of the reasons it's such a genius song is it's such digestible hooks everywhere.
Right.
You can sing the string part at every moment. You know what he's doing. The story is obviously really compelling. And so when I got to Shives, I was like, hey, I know what we're doing wrong. We need to break this down to its small, like, let's just sing string parts and that's the part every time. And he was like, great. And then it was like off to the races.
Yeah.
It was so fun. That whole day we had a blast, came together exactly like I wanted. And it really served a very specific purpose for me, which was like, I wanted to have something that kind of felt like that. And then I had this song that could do it. But you know, when you juxtapose those two, the demo and that, they're really different. And that song was as much a reason that I did the year after we released it, we did a deluxe edition with a bunch of the demos. And that demo was almost the whole reason I did that deluxe version, because I was like, I just wanted people to hear it because they're so different.
Yeah. I really think, not just because of the podcast, but I really think artists should do more work tape releases.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was talking to Matt Wertz about that when he was on, because he sent me 4 songs to choose from, and I was like, dude, I can't choose. These are great work tapes, and you should put them out for your fans.
Yeah.
I would love that.
I think too, I think one of the things that's great about work tapes, and I think you can see it in the demo that I did, I think you feel the heart behind it a little better most of the time. It's not always a perfect vocal and everything.
That's kind of what it is. Like there's a certain passion, like a little sparkle in there that's like.
But it also shows you how things can start here and end here.
Yes.
Which and I mean, obviously I do this professionally, but it fascinates me.
Yeah.
Like I love seeing the genesis to the ending of like, oh man, so y'all just ditched that whole part and wrote a new part for this,
right.
Or you did this and didn't do this. And so, you know, I think for that one, as much as maybe any song I've ever written, the beginning and the end were just so different. We changed keys, I mean, everything. So
I didn't catch that.
Yeah. Because Ben, I mean, this is the stuff I geek so hard about it, being a musician. He's like, hey, that key is tough for string players. Can we drop it? And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, it's like, you don't want to play in a couple of keys for string players, and you are on one of them. And so we dropped it, which I'm glad we did because it's easier to sing. But, you know, just little things that, you know, Matt Mangano, one of my dear friends, I call him Mango, but he's the bass player in Zach Brown Band. Mango has always said, he's like, the key you write it in matters. Because I would move stuff around early days.
Matter.
He played bass for me for years and years on the road. And I always think about that because it's like the resonance, the where your voice is when you sing it. And so when Ben said, hey, can we drop it? I was kind of like, ugh, I don't know.
But also sometimes when you drop it or change the key, the song becomes better or different, easier to sing. And
Sometimes
you're like,
both.
This is a better song now.
Yeah.
Because I'm not straining as hard.
That's right.
Or whatever.
That's right.
Like
That's
the
exactly
emotion
right.
gets more like capsulated.
Yeah.
Is that
No, I'll
is
go
that
with
right?
That. I'll
Capsulated?
encapsulated. There you go.
That's a great word. You should have a podcast.
Actually, let's start that right now. Hey guys, welcome to Dave Barnes. Glad to have you.
Dave Barnes Worktapes.
This is Working It Tapes.
Working It Tapes. That's your workout tapes.
You can do it. You could do. I remember running one time to Are You Gonna Go My Way? And I was like, this is exactly the tempo I run to. And it was a really weird moment. I just kept hitting redo and I was like, oh my gosh, when I do this pattern, it's like the perfect.
See?
That'd be mine. What is
You need to listen more metal when you run.
Oh my gosh.
My favorite lyric in this song, there's a God she prays to, but if she prays wrong, he will leave too.
Yeah. Will he leave too?
Will he leave? Yeah, that's there. It is. I just didn't read it. It is my favorite lyric.
Yeah, thanks.
Can you expand that?
Yeah.
Where did that come from? I think that it's kind of it's an obvious statement to me. But what is that?
You know, I think relationships like moms and dads that split up are just really tough. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot about kids in those scenarios. You know, they're kids and kids figure it out and they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just try to think about this girl that was walking through that and going, man, that's got to be so much to figure out, especially when it's kind of a rough split
Mm-hmm.
and the kid doesn't know all the story of it and everything.
Right.
And then how does that affect how she views her parents and then God, if she thinks about God, and is God like dad or God like mom, or what personality does he take on in that,
Mm-hmm.
and it just made me, and so it was a really fun is not the right word, but if there's a better word for fun to write, it was like, I don't write songs quickly as much anymore, but I feel like that one was pretty quick because it was just kind of all in there. And I love it. I'm so proud of that song. It's really fun to play because I play it a lot more like the demo, obviously.
Right.
And me and Dustin Ransom, who's been on the road with me for forever, it's kind of like a cinematic version of it. He plays very much sort of like a soundscape thing in the background, and it's so much fun to play.
Right.
So much fun to play. But it ends up being more kind of like the album or the demo,
Yeah.
or the work tape.
Yeah. For that line, it feels like your whoever the character of the song is associating God with whoever left or whatever happened.
Yeah.
Which I think is what we do.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
We kind of naturally, like, if we're believers, we're going to associate a lot of times wildly incorrect association of who God is.
Yeah.
Because we're putting it on our hurts.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to use the word trauma.
I love that. Thank you.
But I just did.
Another lyric that I really love in so both of the pre's are very similar lyrics, but barely changed. And it goes from her, it talks about, the character and the boys at her school all seem so deceiving.
Yes.
And then the second time it's appealing.
Yes.
And I think just seeing how, like how your view of the same thing can change as pain sets in.
Things, if this song is specifically about separation in a relationship context or a marriage, your view, having gone through that, your view does change.
Yeah.
You had this like preconceived notion, like when things were fine, of who God is, who your family is, who your spouse is, who your kids are. When you walk through it, everything just goes, and you're like, oh, and now I get to figure all this out again.
Yeah.
Midlife.
Yeah.
It's not very fun.
Yeah.
And you have all these questions. That's why this song is like very, appealing is not the right word to me. Resonant. It resonates with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
In that way. So there's like all these questions.
Yeah.
And the weight of goodbye line isn't patient or kind, but love is.
Yeah.
And you just repeat that over and over.
Yeah.
Which I think everyone needs to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're all kind of told goodbye in different ways, whether your marriage lasts or whatever happens.
Yeah.
You're going to go through stuff.
Yeah.
But love is patient and kind.
It's one of the I talk about this when I play it live. I'm so thankful for songs like that because, like, I think as I get older and life gets heavier, man, I'm thankful I have some place to put that.
Yes.
And this song, as much as any song I've ever written, was that. It was like, I really struggled with this thing, and it was such a gift to be able to sit and get all this out in a way that I hope is really beautiful and helpful, or at least causes people to think.
Yeah.
And I mean, here we go with the T word, but it was really therapeutic for me. It really was.
Yeah.
It was like a way for me to exercise some things.
Yeah. It's great. You have a lot of songs that are hopeful. Like I tend to write songs that are more sad or whatever. I mean, the bulk of them, like it's easier for me to tune into that and write that.
Yeah.
And
what is for me too, oddly. And you know,
Really?
maybe this is full circle with what you said about the humor thing, but I think that's why I don't ever want to cross streams, is because to me, music is this really like,
there's plenty of dark.
lowercase
There's
holy.
plenty of dark humor though.
there's tons, but you're still trying to make people laugh.
Sure.
You're not trying to make them cry. That's what songs for.
But you want to make them cry in music.
You do. And so I think for me, that's why I'm like, people are always like, why don't you write funny songs? I'm like, I don't go to music for that. I want music to like make me laugh, dance, have fun, cry, think.
Right.
You know? It's
Right.
like, I want it to really move me in different ways than humor does. sometimes I want it to be funny.
It is interesting, isn't it? Like when you think about like a comedy song, feels a little more campy than like it doesn't work for some reason. Like
Randy Newman and Tom Waits. I mean, there's probably like 5 people, 10 people in the world who can really nail that super weird thing where it's like really funny but also poignant.
Or like those old country songs that are just hilarious and they work.
But yet they're really hooky or whatever.
They're fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, I think that's why I like to keep them, to quote Offspring, as we always do, to keep them separated. Is because it's like, I don't know, that's just not what I go to it for. So I like to think, no, this is where I can be serious and really have these heavy contemplative thoughts. And then I'll be funny doing my characters over there or whatever. Yeah. But the two of those to me just get a little like,
totally. You just released a new song called Thinking About You. Mm-hmm. It's a cool song.
Oh, thanks.
It's kind of rock and roll.
Yeah.
I like
the Shadowboxers.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's fun. That project is really interesting. So you should have known not to say it because now I got to tell you about it.
How did you do that?
I don't know. I just like my eyes rolled back for a second. That's all. Jesus. Probably 90. Well, my last few records I've written. I write most of my stuff by myself because it's like my safe place. I really protect that. Like I like to be able to just really disappear into my world and write these songs.
So you don't like co-writing?
No, I do. I love it.
You hate people.
I just hate people.
Yeah.
And so white males, oddly,
of course,
top of the list.
Naturally,
because I don't like me.
Right.
And that's a whole other, how much time do we have? I'm going to leave it out.
Yeah.
It's just kind of where I can get as weird as I want. And so I like not having to worry about somebody's going, why are you using
You have to deal with the
chord?
awkward silence.
Yeah. And then I do so much co-writing anyway, so that scratches that itch. But this project was really funny because I was like, I want to release a song a month, but I just done the Beatles thing. I'm writing the next one that's kind of inspired by it. So I was like, those don't make sense for something like this. So what songs could I release? And I was like, well, I've been writing with people now for 15 years, 14 years or something. I have all these songs I love that just never got cut. Like I love them. Mm-hmm. That like me and the kids they'll randomly go, hey, play Symphony. And I'm like, oh, it's like a little demo, whatever. And they love it. So I was like, what if I just like spelunked that catalog, 15 years, 14 years worth of co-writes, and surely there's 10 songs that I feel like I could do.
Oh, yeah.
And so this year I've been releasing every month one of these songs. And so in January it was a song that, what do we do in January? A song I wrote with some people, and now I'm forgetting what it is. Isn't that fun? That's what's fun about life.
Tell us about some people.
They can really be anything.
Yeah.
And that's what's fun about it.
Right.
No, oh my God, what was the first song? Some People's Kids. And so this is what I love about this project. I would never write this song for me. It's really fun. It's kind of like this, kind of boppy thing. Wrote it with Andrew Roberts and Parker Welling, and we were going to pitch it to Thomas Rhett or somebody, whatever. Mm-hmm. Nobody ended up cutting it. But my kids love this song. Like, wear me out about this song, right?
That's a good sign.
It's a great sign. It's a great sign. So that was one. February was a song called Symphony that I wrote with Kelsey Ballerini. This month is a song with the Shadowboxers. Next month it's Maggie Rose. But there are all these songs that I love, but the artists just were like, man, it just doesn't make sense with this project or whatever. And then, you kind of move on and you forget about these things. But I always remember them.
It's a great idea.
Well, and so it's going to be called The Songs That Got Away, and it'll waterfall into a project. But it's been really fun to release stuff that I'm like, oh, it gives me a chance to release it and people not go like, what are you doing? Because I'm like, no. Like, this is the context. Be like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's been really, really fun.
That's awesome.
Like to have this kind of safe place for stuff that I'm like, I wouldn't really put this on a record of mine because it's just enough off to the left to right or maybe even down the middle too much. And so this whole year, each month is like me going back and finding something. I'm like, oh, this was cool. Why did but they didn't record it. Let me do it,
I love that.
Yeah, it's fun.
I've always wanted to do an album or a project called Songs My Friends Wrote.
Oh.
Like I had nothing to do with them. I just want to do it.
It's made me think about, it's funny, I promise you I'm not stealing that idea, but
you can.
When I thought, wow, we have it on camera, so if
you can call it something different. Would you just do that? You're so creative.
Well, I thought about the songs that got away, and then I was like, it'd be fun if I could live another, long time and had time to do it, but like songs that other people wrote, songs that, but just to give some context, because my friends, I have some of the most talented friends in the world.
I know it.
And they'll play me songs that I'm like, this is a joke.
Yeah,
like, why has nobody cut that, or why don't you put it out?
Exactly.
I don't know. I'm like, I just would love that. And so it's funny you said that, because I was like, that'd be, man, what, and especially for someone who writes all their own stuff.
I'll make it with you. You don't have to. It's fine.
That's where I'm going with this. I'm trying to land this plane.
Just to be direct.
I'm sorry.
I'm right here.
Let me tell you my intent.
What have you got coming up, Dave Barnes? And tell us about Dadville.
Yeah. So we'll do Dadville first. What it's so fun. So I do it with John McLaughlin, another insanely talented singer-songwriter. I mean, John, what a joke that guy is.
What a joke he is.
Yeah, it's just a joke of talent. He's copious amounts of giftedness.
Copious. What a great word.
Represents itself in laughter to me.
Yes.
Manifests in jubilee, in jovial response. He and I, we have a podcast called Dadville, and we just have people want to talk about being dads and moms. Like we've sort of.
It's not exclusive. To
no,
dads.
not at all.
Okay.
And it's been so much. We just have so much fun doing it. It's really.
It's a great show.
Oh, thanks.
It's fun.
Yeah, we have so many that we're just like, it's become a joke with us. Like, we text each other so many times after a podcast, like, isn't this so fun?
It is fun.
Like, that's such a common thing after our podcast. And I think that is always kind of a North Star for our continuing to want to do it.
I have a question about podcasting.
Okay.
Since we both do this.
Yeah, these are just mics.
I've told, they're not.
Yeah, they're not magic voice devices.
They are pretty
They actually
magic.
are. I take that back.
They're not magic. My question is this. Do you ever, I've talked to Micah about this before, and I'm like, man, sometimes I spend an hour with somebody that I don't know beforehand, like you. And then I feel like we're like good friends.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then I want to text them later.
No, you.
And then I'm like,
in front of people, you can text me.
I thank you. But I also don't want to be like, do you know what I mean?
Oh, I do.
Because you spend an hour with somebody. I
sort of don't know how to do that, though. That's the good and the bad of me, is that I will over inundate you, and that's just how I am.
That's fine with me, but I think it's interesting because it's almost like you spend an hour with somebody talking about probably one of their most passionate things they do.
Oh yeah.
Songwriting.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we're on a date.
Yeah.
And then I just want to keep texting you because like, oh, we connected on this and that, and you made me laugh, and I kind of like you, dude.
I know.
Or whatever.
I know.
And it's does
tricky.
That happen when you interview people?
And in fact, I feel bad for some of the guests that I really feel, because I will follow up and be like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
You know, and
want to see my new tattoo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's of you.
Yeah.
But you know, thankfully, I've made like good friends from that podcast.
Yeah.
Like I've had people that I like communicate a decent amount with now, which is really fun.
It is fun.
That takes it to such a different level at that point. It becomes something more than just leads to
podcasting is so weird.
It's so bizarre.
It's a weird format that has taken off.
It is, yeah.
Like everyone has one.
Yeah.
And I think probably everyone should.
Yeah. I mean,
just do it.
I don't have enough time in the day for the stuff I want to listen to.
Me neither.
There's so much good stuff.
There's too much.
And then, you know, as far as what's coming up, that we got Dadville's, and then I'm doing these song months. That's a big. Oh, can I tell you what I'm really excited about that I announced today?
You can't.
I don't know when this is coming out. Definitely 65th episode.
It'll be out, not the 66th. It'll probably be out next week.
Okay. Well, we announced this today. Space Time Continuum is weird in podcast, but
yes.
I'm doing. This is really, really fun. I'm doing for me. I'm doing July 11th and July 12th at 3rd and Lindsley here in town. I'm doing Brother Bring the Sun, which is my first record. It's its 21st anniversary, but we're calling it 20th because it's nice and even. Full playing it in entirety on July 11th.
Oh, cool.
July 12th, it's the 15th year anniversary of What We Want, What We Get, which is the guy gave me you record. We're doing that the next night in its entirety.
Do you want to put on your best advertising voice and do an ad spot? And I literally will do this. I'll play this ad spot.
Okay.
When is it? In July?
July 11th and 12th.
Okay. We can just keep playing it until the show.
Okay. That's all I want you to do.
Let's test your improv.
There we go. You've heard him. You love him. A voice that has peppered your memories. For 2 nights, July 11th and 12th, Dave Barnes plays Brother Bring the Sun, the 11th, and What We Want, What We Get on the 12th, in their entirety with a band. Come experience joy, laughter, and the beauty of music. We'll see you there.
Wow.
Felt great to me.
I would clap if it wasn't so awkward.
Well, and your brother would think it's the end and he would cut it off with the clap.
Right.
That's
editing. I will play that.
So I'm excited. So I've never done that. And I'm like really, really excited about it. So that's kind of, I have these song a month things and that's kind of the next thing.
I'm going to come to that. 100%.
Oh, sweetheart.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
This was fun.
I want to say this. I love anybody that celebrates and talks about music. I think it's a huge
anybody.
deal. I'd mean that. I really do, because I think there's something about today. We're not going to do this. I'm not going to derail this whole thing, but we kind of talked about this. I think in a day where music is free, which means you experience it really differently because you don't have a stake in it, and hey, it's whatever it is, what it is. I just love when people will stop and say, hey, let's like talk and think about this, because it's an incredible thing. And so I'm really glad you do this, and it means you had me come on.
That means a lot. Yeah. I think I agree. I think that music is getting lost in the ocean of songs that are released every day.
Yeah.
And, it's hard for me not to ask everyone I interview, how are you doing this?
I know.
How are you staying afloat? What do you think it's going to be like in 5 to 10 years?
I could talk I have more thoughts than you could imagine on this subject.
I'm sure.
It's a daunting time.
It's also a very, I'm trying to think of the right word. The subject of that is very dramatic.
Well, so I will say this, and then we can.
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
So my friends that aren't in the music space, like this will come up, and I will hear myself, and I'm like, let me tell you what the most annoying sound in the world, other than the Dumb and Dumber sound, is hearing a musician lament how hard music is. Mm-hmm. Nothing is more uninteresting.
Right.
Everybody just start. You have a dream job, and I get that, but I think where it lands for my friends is I go, okay, let me make this palatable to your job. So if I have a friend who does like commercial real estate and owns properties, his company goes in, they build, they make it, I'm like, imagine one morning you wake up and in your inbox is all of your properties. The bank, whoever you're working with, says, hey, you're going to be making, instead of $5,000 a month on that property, you're making $500 a month. And that's for all of your properties. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's the email. They're like, hey, you're going to make 1/100th. We can even go that far. You're making $5 on your properties now. And that's for all of your properties for as long as we know.
And you have to work harder.
And you, because of it. And that is when I see my friends go, wait, is that what it's like? I'm like, I can show you the math. So, and they're never, I don't say that because they chastise me. Sure. They're wonderful. But I just want them to understand, like, I'm not doing the thing where it's like, music is hard. No one cares anymore.
Right.
It's like literally the math changed.
Yeah.
Kind of overnight. And so, realtor friend, like, can you imagine if someone came and said, you're going to make, 1/50th of what you used to make, 1/20th of what you used to make from now on, and we don't know if that'll ever change.
What do you think's going to happen?
Man, I think the hope is this, because I'm a hopeful guy. I think people prioritizing fans is going to be a big deal. Like direct consumer stuff is my opinion for the way forward.
What Thad's doing, something like that.
Yes, exactly that. I think it's giving fans, because here's the thing, I'll talk about myself. If I love a band, I'll give you my money.
Yes.
I will part with it quickly and easily if I love you. I want to do that. I love what you do.
I spent way too much money on Radiohead box sets,
This is what I mean.
Vinyls.
This is what I mean. But I think the problem with nowadays is we don't, as artists, really have a place for people to do that. There's not a table where I can go, hey, I have these things, and people go, oh my gosh, I would love to buy those things from you. Mm-hmm. And so I think we've got to get better at finding, and not in a manipulative way, because I think people watching this would be like, oh, that sounds kind of, I don't mean that. I mean, just like, let's make great stuff you want to get from me, just like any company does. And so I think like when you're giving away your main commodity for free, then you got to get really creative about either how to make it not free anymore, which means a lot of things, or other experiences or interaction pieces that people can purchase. And so I think it's but I do think there's hope in that. I really do. I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. It's kind of like, how do you go to your people who love what you do and want to support you and go like, hey, here's a way to do it. And they go, great.
And that's one thing I keep texting Thad Cockrell, and telling him how much his episode that he did on this meant to me personally. Mm-hmm. I mean, we got tons of feedback on that one. But I've listened to it myself, and they're hard for me to listen to it because I'm on them. So it's weird. but I keep listening to get what he was talking about. One of the things he discussed was you got to choose who you lose.
Wow. You
need to focus on your people.
Yeah.
Like who is, as an artist, you can't, you can't aim for everybody or you'll miss everybody.
No, that's one of Dad's real tenets. And I think it's true. And I think that's what, like anytime I tell people that, it's about $3,500 if you own your master for 1 million streams.
Yeah.
That is, people cannot digest that. I've watched my friends, like their eyes start bleeding and they roll back and they're like, I don't, a million.
Doesn't make sense.
Like, 1 million.
Yeah.
Like, and you know how hard it is to get 1 million streams on Spotify. It is.
That's what I mean by working
so
harder.
Hard.
You're getting less math and having to work.
Well, and I think too, and this is the last time I'll say, because again, I can beat this horse into oblivion. I think that's what is the hardest for me, is feeling like I came up in a time where the energy you put into it, you kind of got out of it a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't exact transference, but it was close. It's like you played a bunch of shows and made really great records with really talented producers and whatever. It had a shot. And these days, it doesn't work like that. You're taking the same quality of product to the end point and then chucking it in the Grand Canyon and praying to God it catches a breeze and floats for a while.
Right.
You just have no agency over it anymore. And I think that's what breaks. And a lot of people watch this like, yeah, you do. And okay, sure. Like, you don't. And if you have a label, they have agency. If you have people that have connections, they do. But your ability to make really great music and feel like this is good enough that if people hear it, they'll love it. It's just not. It's not as surefire anymore. And so I think it's just humbling when you think of a way forward. Because you're like, oh, making great stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah, and part of the entertainment thing, like the illusion of entertainment, is that, oh, well, Dave's had a #1 song, and he writes with this person, this person, this person, this person. So it's all fine.
Yeah.
And that's
the humbling piece. And I think that's where artists have really got to figure out if they're okay sort of putting themselves out there and going like, hey, like, you probably have this image of me, which I appreciate, because you assume best because you think I'm really good, which is awesome and means the world, right? But I'm going to let the curtain up a little here and show you what is happening behind the scenes. And I'm oddly comforted by when I talk to my friends about it, brass tacks, and they're like, how are you doing this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know.
Most of us have other jobs.
Yeah, I know, side hustles.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Of course.
This is great.
Thanks for being here.
When do we start recording?
Tomorrow.
Oh, it felt great. I'd love to. I would tweak a couple things, but
first draft run through was pretty good.
Yeah, felt good.
All right. You ready to write some songs? We have another 4 hours.
The weight of goodbye isn't patient or kind, but love it.
Worktapes is produced by me, Brandon Carswell. Filming and editing by Shaun Carswell. Special thanks to Dave Barnes. Go to davebarnes.com for more information. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Worktapes wherever you listen to podcasts.
Love is the weight of goodbye, it's patient and kind, as much as you try. Oh no, but love.